In this video we're going to create this kitchen sink faucet, and we'll be using a polygon cylinder and a UV path. I'm starting out in my top view and I'm going to create a basic cylinder, and then I'll go to my front view to give it a certain length to start with. In the channel box on the right, I'm going to click on Inputs and Poly Cylinders, and I'm going to make the subdivision axes 20. That will make the geometry rounder. While in the front view, I'll hold down the space bar, I'll go to Create CV Curve tool, and I'm going to go to the attributes and I'll set it for 2. And I'll start to create the path that will give me the arc of the faucet. In my perspective view, I'm going to make sure that the path lines up pretty well directly over the top of the cylinder. I'm going to select the faces on the top of that cylinder by clicking on my right mouse. I'll choose Face, and I'll shift select the faces on the top. If I hold the Control key at the same time and I accidentally click on a selected face, it will not take it out of the selection. So it's a little thing that makes it a little easier to do so. I'm going to hit 4 on the keyboard to go to wireframe to make sure I haven't selected any of the poly faces on the side of the cylinder. Now I'll shift select the path, and I'm going to go to Edit Mesh, and I'm going to my Extrude tool attributes. I'm going to set the divisions for 20, and that will give me 20 faces that will follow the arc of the path. And I'll go back to my front view. If I need to edit the arc in any way, I can go to my object mode now, and I'll center the pivot, and I can move it away from the path. Select the path, control vertices, and I can go in and I can Now that I have the basic shape, I want to add the detail where it's flared wider at the bottom and that flared at the tip. I'm going to use my Edge Loop tool to start adding extra geometry. Clicking on the Edge tool, which I could have gotten by going to Mesh Tools, Insert Edge Loop, I'll start to add a split. And now I'll select the faces, grab the base, and with my Scale tool, I'll start to make it wider, and if need be, I'll move it down. Now there's detail here where it seems to be more than one piece, and I can apply the same thing using the Edge Loop tool and the Extrude tool as well. With the Edge Loop tool, I'll start to develop the collar that separates this base piece from the cone shape here. I'll use the Edge Loop to add the collar that appears on the faucet. I'll right click and choose Face, and I'll select the faces I've just defined. Going back to my Edit Mesh Extrude tool attribute, I'm going to reset it to the default. And when I apply it, I'll click on the little blue dial in the right hand corner and scale it out. Now if I hit 3 on the keyboard, it starts to fall apart, so I need to add more edge loops so that I can maintain that shape as well as the basic cylindrical shape of the faucet itself. I'll hit 1 on the keyboard, and at the very base I'll add an edge loop as close to the edge as I can get it. And then up where I introduce the collar, I need to add an edge below it and one above it, as close as I can get. Now when hitting 3 on the keyboard, it maintains the integrity of the cylinder but gives me that collar shape. Now there's another one a little bit further up. I'll do the same thing with the edge loop for that. Hitting 1 on the keyboard to return to the state of geometry so the polygon faces are visible. I'll follow the same procedure. And I'll click on my Extrude tool center the pivot, and I'll flare it out. And it's the same down here. I need an edge below it and above it to maintain the integrity. When I hit 3 on the keyboard, I pretty much have what I want for that. Now I'm going to address the flare at the top of the faucet opening. Returning to 1, I'll go to my object mode, and I'll start by flaring out. And if I look at the faucet, it also kind of curls under a bit and rounds because it's kind of a soft metal edge. This is a little too straight across. So once again, I'll use the edge loop, and I'll put an edge in close to the original. And I'm going to select the vertices with the selection ellipse, not unlike the tool you would have in Photoshop. I've selected the vertices I want to scale in. I'll hit 4 on the keyboard to make sure I haven't selected any I don't want. Hitting the scale tool, I'll flare it in. The last detail I might put in, according to the photo, is where it breaks up here. And I'll use my edge loop tool for that. Returning to my object mode now, and I'll put an edge here, and then move it as close as I can to the original. Hitting F on the keyboard to zoom in on it. I'll put one between those two, and I'll scale it in. Now if I hit 3 on the keyboard and go back to my object mode, I've created the body of the faucet neck.